Knowing how to longboard through a turn is a pretty necessary skill. It's going to be useful whether you're simply cruising around your neighborhood or skating as fast as 30 miles per hour down a downhill road. If you want to learn the basics of how to do that, check out this video. In order for this video to be really useful to you, you should already know how to slow down. You can do that through either foot braking or by a slide. You can either do a Coleman or a toe-side pendulum slide. Knowing how to slow down, or rather how to reduce your speed, is necessary for taking turns safely. Let's look at the basics first. In order to take a corner, you go to the outside of the corner, the inside of the corner, and the outside of the corner again. Just remember to slow down a considerable amount before you take the corner. Having too much speed will mean you're not able to make it around the corner, and this means you might fall into the other lane, fall off the road, or put yourself in harm's way. So to reiterate, you go to the outside, you go to the inside, and you go to the outside again. Now, why do we do this? We go to the outside, inside, and outside again because it's the straightest line through the corner. We aim to take the straightest line through the corner because it puts the least amount of stress on our wheels. Our wheels are what provide the grip and basically what sticks our board to the road and guarantee we can make it around the corner. We don't want to exceed the amount of grip available, otherwise we will slide off the road. Trying to go around a corner with too much speed is an easy way to exceed the grip of our wheels. So yeah, you typically slow down before you do the outside, inside, outside thing. But yeah, some skaters are really skilled and they can do something called a pre-drift, which is a directional slide. And they can do this as they're approaching the inside, and this allows them to slow down whilst they're also steering. But yeah, typically with your shutdown or pendulum slide or foot brake, you're going to want to slide before you take the outside, inside, outside line. Now that we know what line we need to take, let's look at body positioning. You want to be crouched and in the slide positions if you're going to be taking a corner fast. If you're taking it slow, you can kind of stand up, but when you're going fast, you want to be crouched. Whilst we wouldn't be sliding, being in the slide positions brings us closer to the ground, lowering our center of gravity, putting our weight on our front feet, and ultimately this gives us more control over the board when we are negotiating the corner. For more information on these slide positions, you can check out my things to do before you try slide your longboard guide. And honestly, if you're a beginner, I think the information I've just provided for you is sufficient. Like, it's basically all you need. You know what lines to take, you know how to position yourself, and you know that you need to slow down before you take such lines. So yeah, I highly recommend you go find some corners to mess around with this concept, get used to it. And yeah, do that before coming back to this video, because this next section is a little bit complex and it requires that you have a bit of real world experience in order to understand it and also to apply it. So yeah, go off, practice, you have all the information you need. Now let's talk about race lines. A race line is essentially the same as the outside, inside, outside principle, but it's a bit more complex and better developed for different turns, different vehicles, and some of the different outcomes that you want. A racing line just allows you to carry a maximum amount of speed into and out of a corner. Now, do we need to know how to take a race line? I'd say for us to know how to skate a turn as safely as possible, I believe we must understand how a race line works. We're learning the fastest way to do it so we can take it slower and thus safer. By understanding the limits, we can skate safely within them. Okay, so some common terms for you guys to understand before we proceed. Your line from the outside to the inside is your entry line or your entrance line, and your line from the inside to the outside is your exit line. The inside part of the corner that you touch is the apex. When someone talks about the inside, they're either talking about the apex or they're talking about the innermost part of the corner. And when someone talks about the outside, they're talking about the outermost part of the corner. There are different types of race lines and you can apex the corner depending on the race line you want to take. Now, this is important because how you apex determines your exit line. Now, the exit line is arguably the most important thing when it comes to skating a corner or skating roads. It's especially important on roads that are open to traffic or have hazards on either side, for example, a guardrail, a cliff, or rocks, whatever. So to iterate, the exit line is super important. Now, there are three types of apexes that you can take: the early apex, the geometric apex, and the late apex. I'll explain them all shortly. Let's look at the first one, which is the geometric apex. The geometric apex is the outermost point of the inside of a corner. Hitting the geometric apex allows you to take the mathematically straightest line through a corner. So when you hit the geometric apex, you're going to have like a pretty good balance of making your wheels grip but still having enough grip that you're not gonna like slide out on the exit line, or rather your line from the apex to the outside. The next is the early apex. The early apex means you go inside super early and touch the apex well before the location of the geometric apex. This means you'll have to take a very wide and very curved line after the apex in order to make it to the outside. This means your exit line will be sort of curved, and this is not good for two reasons. So if you're accelerating after the apex, right, and you increase the speed and you have to take a very curved line, right, you're making your wheels work a lot more. Your wheels are already working pretty hard to keep you on the road, but now accelerating, you give them more speed to deal with, and this is not good. Often when you take an early apex, you're not going to make the corner. In order to make the corner, you have to slow down again on your exit line. In many videos, when you see people take early apexes, you always see them sort of washing out into the other lane or washing out off the road. This is just really dangerous. Like, imagine if there's a guardrail there or a car in the other lane, whatever it is. Typically, taking an early apex isn't desirable because it gives you a exit line that you have to work very hard to make the most out of, or yeah, I hope that makes sense. The next thing that we're going to be talking about is the late apex. The late apex is located well after the location of the geometric apex. If you hit a late apex, you can have a very straight line towards the outside. And yeah, because you're able to take a kind of straight line, your wheels aren't really doing much work or much gripping. So yeah, so you're not really at risk of like washing out or sliding out, even if you accelerate like so much. The late apex is typically the safest way to take a corner. How do you take a late apex? So to take a late apex, you slow down a little bit more than usual, go deeper into the corner, and turn in a little bit later from the outside than you usually would. This would allow you to hit the inside a little bit later and get that late apex and straighter exit line. However, if you're having trouble getting that late apex, just slow down a bit more than usually would and go around the corner. You'll make it. Something that people do that's sort of an exaggeration of this whole going deep and late apex thing is when they're going to a turn, they break into the other lane. They go a little bit deep and then swing into the lane. Swinging in allows them to take a really straight line to the late apex and just carry on that way. This only works, of course, if the inside is your lane. So yeah, be careful. And I'm not suggesting that you do this, but I'm just showing you as an example and should help explain why people do that. Okay, I've told you guys that the late apex is the safest line, but why is it? Well, the moment in a corner when you have the least amount of control is when you're on the exit line. There's often not a lot of room for error, and here's why. Once you're committed to an exit line, that's it, man. If your trajectory is into the lane or somewhere undesirable, it isn't very easy to recorrect. It isn't easy to recorrect because you often realize you've messed up your line too late, and honestly, there's little you can do to fix it. Yes, sliding is an option, but sliding often continues you on that trajectory, and more often than not, you'd also not be in a very good body position to control the slide. Unless you have like a lot of foresight to see, oh damn, okay, I've kind of hit the apex in the wrong way, I should start sliding early so I don't wash out into the other lane. Or you're a very talented rider, there's very little that you can do. However, If you simply take the late apex, you can have a lot straighter exit, work your wheels less, and have a lot more room for error, which if you're skating open roads is something you really want. So in summary, the exit line is dangerous. Once you're in it, it's difficult to adjust your line. It's a lot easier to ensure that you're hitting the late apex and getting a straighter exit and not torturing your wheels much or at all. Now let's quickly look at things that limit how much speed you can carry through your corner. The first thing is your wheels. Now there are two types of wheels. You have something like a race wheel like this that has a square lip and a wide contact patch. This thing really grips the road and has a lot of urethane and just doesn't want to slide out. Then the other thing you have is a freeride wheel like this dragon skin. It has a round lip wheel, a small contact patch, and it wants to slide out. So you can go a lot faster around a corner with a wheel like this than you can with a wheel like that. Your wheel determines how much speed you can carry through a corner. The next thing is road conditions. Depending on the pavement, whether the road is clean or not, whether it has wetness or moss or it's super hot, these things impact grip. A dry road will grip more than a wet road, but things like debris, like dirt in the road, like moss will also make the road a lot less grippy. Another thing that limits how much speed you can take through the corner is your weight. If you're a really heavy guy, you're not going to be able to take as much speed through a corner as a lighter guy. I've had people who are about like 100 kg or like 220 pounds complaining about how slow they have to take it through a corner, and 120-pound guys just like gripping the road and skating really fast. I don't really want to explain the science behind it, but the more weight you have, the more like force you're making the wheels have to deal with, essentially. The next thing is how tight a corner is. Now, if a corner is like really tight, like a 180-degree turn, you can't take a very straight line through it. You have to take a curved line, and in order to make it, you need to slow down. If a corner is a lot more open, you can take a much straighter line through it, and you can carry a lot more speed. So yeah, okay, so you have all this information. Now let's talk about applying these concepts to real world roads. So all you have to do is find a corner that you can skate regularly, that's kind of safe, that's spotted, or you can have some of your friends spotting, and just sort of mess around with these concepts, experiment with them, and all those good things. If you really want to see race lines at work, I highly recommend you check out the IDF videos, or rather of race heats and stuff, and you'll see these things being applied in real life, and you'll be able to sort of maybe even gain some experience from that. I don't know, it'll help. And a quick tip, if you're having a lot of trouble like figuring out a race line, start with the exit line. Start from like the outside to the inside, but in the opposite way. Start from the exit and figure out like how a straight line would get to like an apex, and start backwards, you know. Another tip that I have for you guys is learn to ride every line. Don't just like focus on riding the late apex line, like also practice the early apex line and sort of like figuring out how you can manage that and bring it back or make the corner with that. Practice the geometric apex line, practice other crazy things, and all this will do is just make you a very proficient rider, because when you're on the open road, if you're skating with other riders, you're not always going to have the optimal line available to you. Something might happen, let's say a truck has driven down and there's a bit of sand in the road, or it just rains, there's a wet spot, or someone falls. You're going to have to take a different line. So learning to ride different lines would make you more proficient and more ready for whatever the road has to throw at you. I quickly want to shout out the accompanying write-up for this video, link in the description. Check it out. In the write-up I have some tips for taking the corners fast, other things to watch out for, and tips for more advanced riders. I'd say them here, but they'd add like another 10 minutes to the video, and I don't really want to regurgitate all that info. Probably take you like a minute to read through all of it, so check out the write-up. And yeah, that's basically the end of the video. Thank you for watching, guys. As always, big thanks to my patrons. Could not do this without you guys. As well, if you guys have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment, whether you like the video or disagree with it. Also, if you have any advice for other riders, please feel free to comment. You know, my information is not the be all and end all. I'm still learning very much, so if you have something I've missed out on, feel free to share with the people. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.